Welcome in to the pre-race poll. Everybody get in here. Oh, happy race day, everybody. I have a co-host joining me today. Except he doesn't know how live streams work, apparently. And he's not here yet. So we're just waiting on Todd to get this thing going. We didn't even talk before this. So we're just going to wing it and see how this goes. But, these morning races are tough. I mean, that's 9 o'clock. I already did break the seal. Whew. That is early. Anyway, hopefully Todd's hopping on now. Happy practice means nothing day. Denny for the W. I guess I agree with both of these. Excited. Yeah, excited for a hot slit track. I agree. I think it's going to be a great race today. That's what I think. Well, I mean, I kind of want to wait for the poll with Todd here. He said hopping on now. But I don't know. Blaney 9-1. It seems short, but I do like Blaney today. I do like Blaney. I saw Blaney was down to 6.5 to 1 at some places, MGM, or 6 to 1. Yeah. Morning, Kim. How's it going? Did we learn anything from practice? Yeah, we'll talk about that. Hey, here he is. He's not even at his desk. This guy. Oh, here he comes. Here he comes. We had a hard start time here, Todd. I don't know if you know that or not. I know I'm talking right now. And let me add him to the stage here. Hey, there he is. You guys see Todd okay?
I'm new to this kind of thing, so it takes me a little while to get set up over here, Buttercup.
I mean, do you know how live streams work? Or is this your first one?
Do you know what it's like when you have...
Yep, see? This is what I'm talking about. This is why you guys show up here. As we speak, people are leaving. They're changing the channel.
I mean, I get that a lot when I put my face on air. So I'm going to get set up. I'm going to let you talk to yourself like you normally do aimlessly on these Sunday mornings, and try and explain to us first and foremost why practice times are going to be absolutely irrelevant when you're handicapping this race, knowing that practice conditions were nowhere near what we're going to see today with 80-degree temps.
Yeah, boy. You always love to see practice. It's always nice to see it, but when it doesn't mean anything, it's really hard to take substantial positions. I think at this point in the weekend, or at this point, all we've done is kind of take a few, basically try to steal some value on guys to win the race. And I think that it's important to maybe not lay a price today. If you're laying more than minus 130 in a matchup, you better be really sure that you're that you're sure that this matchup's going to come in, because we could just see so many different things happen throughout the race today. And, we didn't see a long run. We saw cording with tires. We've seen cording in the past. I don't think we're going to see that today, but I do think we're going to see multiple grooves, and I hope we see some passing. But ultimately, practice, I mean, Denny said it, don't take anything from practice.
Yeah, his comments were basically like, I put absolutely no stock in a practice today, and I don't think that's going to determine what goes on. So, I mean, when we see a race like this, you and I talk about it all the time, trying to go through the numbers. We've seen the market move. Clearly, the betting market has responded favorably to track position. We've seen Ryan Blaney's numbers get absolutely crushed from where they were early in the week. We've seen Kyle Busch's price come down. But I mean, look, can you really go to the window and feel confident laying $140, $150 in Kyle Busch in any of these matchups whatsoever? But you know what? I'm so used to hosting, I forgot.
Yeah.
This is your show.
Hey,
you get to guide me where I need to go.
Do I need to change this to whenever I disagree with you, I want you oh, there we go.
Yeah, now, there we go. Let's move into a smaller box.
For the poll, let's just leave it like this. All right. So, we got to take a poll. Do you have a drink, Todd?
I have two.
So
I had to try and figure out, what I was going to do, because with Passover around the corner, or not around the corner, ongoing, no malted beverages for me. So I have a little pineapple vodka soda, because we need some fruit in the morning.
Good.
To keeping with tradition and custom for you, I decided to go with a pineapple cider myself. So should I start with vodka soda, or should I go cider?
I'd go cider. I mean, I hope that's a twist off. Otherwise, this will be like an embarrassing
start.
But
because I'm not as dumb as I look, I did bring a bottle opener this morning. So I had
what a start to this show. I mean, we're 5 minutes in and we have talked about nothing racing, but hey, that's fine. People
No,
come
we
here
talked about practice
We
and
did.
what may
Yeah, we
or may
talked.
not actually unfold or how useful that could be.
Yeah. Well, let's
So,
get you back into your normal.
all right.
Whenever I disagree with what you're saying, well, cheers. Take a pull.
Cheers. Thanks for having me on today, buddy. I
Yep.
appreciate
Happy
it.
race day. So let's just get the rundown. Kyle Busch. So out of nowhere, Kyle Busch looks, I would say, average in practice. It's the only time he hasn't looked bad in practice. And then he lays down one hell of a lap. I think, gosh, here's my thought on Kyle, and maybe poke a hole in it if you can.
Yep.
I think he's going to hang around the top 10 all day. If you think for 2 seconds that Kyle Busch is going to go out there and lead the first 30 laps of this race and actually look decent in clean air, I think you're wrong. I think you have to expect he's going to get to a lead. He's good here. So let's just say after 50 or 60 laps, he starts to fall off. I don't see him ever leaving the top 10 unless he has an issue. So,
which with the 8 car is a very real possibility that the 8 will find a way to end up with something self-inflicted. But I agree with you. I think clean air is going to mask some of the deficiencies we've seen all season long in the RCR program. So when you look at Kyle Busch, he actually seemed to have positive body language, which was a bit of a revelation for the first time. But I mean, you look through some of the practice numbers and they don't blow you away by any stretch of the imagination. Yeah, I guess he was top 10, top 11 thereabouts for his 5-lap average. But at the same time, maybe clean air, like you've always said, is the hell of a drug, or Ryan Stevens, whoever I'm pirating it from. And that allows him to build that confidence. My biggest question is this, and you've brought this up over and over again with some of these other drivers, Kyle Busch notwithstanding, we know about his championship pedigree. Does RCR have enough tools in their tool belt if Kyle Busch gets shuffled back in the field to drive back up to the front? That's the $100 million question.
No, and I don't think I think that's an easy answer to the $100 million question. I don't think there's a chance in hell if Kyle Busch makes a mistake, he sees the top 5 again. The only way, it's so hard to pass. I mean, Kyle Busch has been racing against Austin Cindric and Ricky Stenhouse. Okay, he's gonna be racing against Denny Hamlin, William Byron, Ryan Blaney. We haven't seen him do that this year on super speedway. So if he stays up there all day in the top 5 and you get a late race caution, Kyle's going to go out there and he's going to try to win the race off pit road. And if he does, he could run the last 30, 40 laps and win this thing. So let's keep her moving. Ryan Blaney, in my opinion, the fastest car in practice. I think that, I know that he doesn't have the history here. He did have a decent finish here last year. He kind of was in and out of the top 5 all day. Ryan Blaney was really strong. But again, Ryan Blaney's really good at these tracks where you have a lot of grip and you're on the throttle often. As this track starts to widen out, we haven't seen Ryan Blaney run a bunch of lines. He usually is really good on the bottom. And if you take that line away, it's hard for him to go on the outside, get to that right rear quarter panel and make passes. I like Ryan Blaney, but if this track widens out, like I anticipate, I don't know that he's going to be as good as the price right now. 6-1, some places have him listed. I think that's too short.
Yeah, I mean, it's nuts. I mean, 18-1, I think, was the going rate going into practice yesterday morning. You saw that number get shortened substantially. I think it was Westgate that reopened him at 14. That number has come down. Circa was a little bit lower out here in the desert. But, I mean, you look at his prices in some of these head-to-head matchups, I just can't buy into it because Ryan Blaney has had one good run at Dover. To your point, he came here last year. But the track conditions at Dover last year for the race were the exact same that we saw in practice yesterday. Temperatures in the high 50s, low 60s. If this becomes hot and slick, that hasn't always been a recipe for success for Ryan Blaney. So if anything, this is a guy, you like to use the term boom or bust. You're betting him in some of those derivative markets to have a great finish, or you're looking to potentially fade him in matchups where he's upwards of $1.40, $1.50, or $1.60 favorite against guys that I think can run real well from HMS and JGR.
Yeah, I agree. I think it'll be interesting to see what happens. I'm excited about this race. Just hot and slick conditions just make better racing, and you're going to see more passing. If everyone's just sitting on the bottom, you're not going to see any passing. It's going to be steel track position any way possible. And it's tough. Here's the thing. I don't like laying a price. We actually haven't played any matchups other than our best bet at this point in the weekend. I think this is one of those races where you want to get paid properly. We've dabbled in some outright prices, but as of right now, there might be a matchup or two that we give out here in a minute. But ultimately, I haven't seen a ton, and it's just tough to lay a price because we just don't know what's going to happen 50 laps into a run. Is this track going to widen out? And in how far back can a winner come from? We've seen drivers drive up deep through the field and work their way up. Let's go on. William Byron. I mean, I was listening to his radio in practice. He looked good. He qualified well. Oh, by the way, he doesn't make mistakes. And they ran 15 laps and said, hey, we've seen enough. So that to me says, there weren't any adjustments. Just, hey, you look good. We're done.
And I think the one interesting comment from William Byron for anybody who happened to watch practice and qualifying is he talked about how important this race is to him, given his family ties. He talked about his entire dad's side of the family being from Maryland. He'd love nothing more than to be able to win this race. And to your point, I mean, this is a guy that regardless of what machine they put under him, adjusts to track conditions. He gets better as the race goes on. He's performed well at Dover in the past. And he's actually a guy that I had isolated in a matchup that I wanted to bet. But because I got caught up this morning, and it's no excuse in this business, thought about taking plus $130 against Kyle Larson. And I know we'll talk about your beloved 5 in a matter of moments. That number's not out there now. But I think when we're looking at William Byron and how good he's been all season long, his track record at Dover, his ability to adapt, I think he'll very much be in the top 5 in terms of running position all day long. I know people who go, well, he didn't run that well in the intermediate package at Bristol. He had an issue early on, so I kind of throw that result out. It's not incident free, so that becomes an afterthought for me. He was very good at Vegas, despite the 10th place finish.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, Vegas had the bag.
The bag.
Issue. So,
that's the whole thing. Speed again there. He could have easily won that race.
Yeah, he's
we're talking about a shorter number.
He was the only guy that was probably in the same zip code as that 45 and the 5. So, I think that Byron, gosh, it's just such a short price for that top 5. Big Ross, I see you look at plus 100 on that top 5. He probably hangs around all day. Just, gosh, he's one of the few guys that can work his way back up through the field. I think there's a handful of guys that if they make a mistake early, they can work their way back through the field. Kyle Busch is not one of them. We've already talked about that. I do think that William Byron, you could throw in that category. Denny Hamlin, definitely you could throw in that category. Kyle Larson, you could definitely throw in that category. Ryan Blaney is not really one of those guys. It'll be interesting to see what Chase Elliott can do from starting deep, but let's keep her moving on. Tyler Reddick, probably in practice, arguably the second or third best Toyota we saw. Doesn't run well here, but the one thing we don't know, if this track widens out, we saw Cole Custer running a third groove, in my opinion, yesterday. If that's the case, I think that the 45, some of these guys that do like to drive off that right rear could see some straightaway speed. And like they said, champions drive in the corner and legends drive off. And if he can get that drive off, I think that Tyler Reddick could be one of those guys that over a long run could be really strong today.
And he's another guy that we saw 25-1, pretty much the market consensus when we dropped the Stay Green podcast earlier this week. That number is shortened considerably. And you mentioned his not so stellar track record here at Dover. Tyler Reddick's the guy for me that kind of becomes the outlier, because I think we're seeing before our very eyes the evolution of one of the sport's next truly elite drivers. And so when we look at some of the track history that he's been able to accumulate, I kind of throw everything out before he became a member of 2311. Yeah. And you can see him getting better at these tracks. So when the high line comes in, to your point, high banking tracks, I mean, this has kind of been in Tyler Reddick's DNA. So at 14-1 or thereabouts, I'm not sure I'm running to the window to bet him as an outright. I'm not willing to lay $180 or thereabouts against Brad Kay and some of the other drivers that are there. But it wouldn't shock me at all if Tyler Reddick's a guy that we were talking about late in the race that had an opportunity for a top 5 finish, top 3. And if things broke the right way, maybe even to win this. He's a guy each and every week that I think you always have to factor in unless he unloads riding a donkey during practice. Yeah,
I do think the track needs to widen out for that to happen. Otherwise, I think he kind of rests outside the top 10 all day if he ever loses that track position. Noah Gragson, you got to hand it to him. I mean, he's been consistently
your boy, Chris Wormy on again, Team Noah
again. If this track turns into what we think it could, I think Gragson will be all right. I mean, practice, he didn't practice great, but he stayed out there the entire time. That to me says that they didn't think that there was an adjustment they could make where they could, improve the race car. So they just kind of wanted to see the direction on where that car went. I think he's kind of priced that way. I know that there was a matchup where he opened like a pick'em against Johnson. I think that got
that one. Honestly, I looked at that and I did a double take. It looked like that may have been a screen malfunction more than anything else, because the timestamp on there said April 25th, and that particular offshore operator did not have that matchup up at April 25th. So I think that minus 120 to minus 180 move that we're seeing on the screen, not indicative of a true price.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to keep moving just because I don't know that Gregson's going to be a factor in the race. And where I think that this guy will be. I think Denny Hamlin, he called his shot on Monday. Whether I feel like Denny calls his shot every week, he just publicly said it this week. And gosh, he looked good in practice. He made some adjustments. When they started practice, I think that they felt off. Now, lap times didn't really show that, but I think for the feel he was looking in his race car, he thought it would be a little better. However, when they came out after those adjustments, I think Gabe Hart came on the radio and said, all right, there's no one in that same zip code. Let's not make any mistakes, and let's get ready for qualifying. So I do think Denny's going to be there. Good qualifying for him. He's a guy that if he gets out there early on and takes the lead, I think you'll see his live odds drop drastically and kind of be the favorite for most of the race if he gets out front.
So we've had this discussion before with Denny Hamlin, and I think it's an important topic when you look at how good he has been with race winning speed, arguably every week. I mean, it doesn't matter what track we go to, Denny Hamlin leads laps. Are we at a point where we feel comfortable backing Denny in some of the matchups that are out there? Because we talked about some of the stats. It's basically wreckers or checkers for Denny. Yeah. And he's more or less said that if he has a chance to win the race, that's what he's going for. So is he the kind of driver that you're only taking maybe as an underdog against Kyle Larson, more so than laying a price? Not just because we don't have practice data that we can lean into, but just as a general race mentality where for Denny, if he's not grabbing the checkered flag, he doesn't give a damn if he's finishing 15th or 20th.
I think it's a good point. I'm not rushing to back him. The only price I thought about was maybe the Truex. I do think Truex is good here. I don't think he's the same zip code as Denny when it comes to practice times. I think that Denny's just kind of running better. That 11 is vying for wins week in and week out. However, you go back to Texas and he was 50-50 to win the race or finish tail end of the lead lap. And he's going,
I still want to question Denny's analytics and the true mathematical calculation there, because that 50-50 reminds me of my buddy who used to tell me all the time when he bought a lottery ticket. He says he's got a 50% chance to win it or he's got a 50% chance to lose it. Don't think that math pencils any more than Denny saying he had a 50-50 shot to make that high line stick.
Yeah, that's an interesting question, Denny, or that Derek's bringing up. Maybe he realizes that, hey, a second place finish isn't terrible. Everyone says that. So Big Ross tends to agree, and when Big Ross and I agree, when everyone agrees with me, it's just confirmation bias. So,
I think my connection's breaking up, Worm. I think my connection's breaking up. It only took 17 minutes for you to pat yourself on the back this Sunday morning.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to put you in timeout again here. I hate to do this, but Chase Briscoe, boy, he qualifies well here. I think he still finishes a lap down. Does that sound like Chase Briscoe? I do think he's matched up against some guys on the screen that I didn't hate the price just because I think they're going to go a lap down as well. You can take Chase Briscoe, but man, he needs a huge head start. And in some of these screen matchups where we're seeing him, I'm not going to mention him because I haven't gotten down yet, but I think that Kashi can hang on, but I still think he finishes a lap down.
I got to text my runner and make sure he's awake. I mean, because we can't be giving out matchups, blowing up our numbers here during a live betting show in any capacity.
Yeah, I know.
To be able to make sure that works. Interesting on Briscoe. I think what I found fascinating is I believe Bob Pockrass had him inside of his top 5 as a guy that he thought could run consistently and competitively today. But honestly, I mean, I know we talked a little bit about Noah. I mean, SHR week in, week out for me has been the hardest team to try and assess, especially anything other than a short track where it feels like every one of their drivers, from Chase Briscoe to Ryan Preece to Josh Berry to Noah Gragson, is built around that particular racing package and that track more than anything else. So no strong opinion for me on Chase Briscoe either way, at least the way things stand now.
Yeah. Michael McDowell, man, it's just a great qualifying. I guess that's all you can really say about him. I don't anticipate him being great today. This has not been a good track for him. Would you say he's never finished in the top 20? What was the stat?
I think he's got one, and I know we talked about this a little bit. We didn't get to it on the podcast. The over-under finishing position for McDowell before practice and qualifying, 20.5. That actually got steamed up. So it was 22.5 over minus $1.40. So it just speaks to the way the market kind of viewed him in a greater context. I didn't see it get reposted now, but if you have an opportunity to get back to go over 20.5 flat, might not be the worst bet, because I think Michael McDowell finds himself a couple laps down today.
Yeah, I agree. Alex Bowman, finally seeing him qualify well. He's a tough guy to pass. I think he gets a lot out of his race car. I do think that HMS, all 4 of their cars were good. I think that they had that long run speed. It's really hard to compare groups A and group B week in and week out. We see group A usually take off a little faster, but then fall off more with the green track eating up those tires. And then Group B, maybe not fire off quite as fast, but then hang on longer as a little bit of rubber gets laid down. Not saying a lot did, but certainly more than Group A. Bowman kind of hung on, and I trust him here. He's won here. He beat Kyle Larson on a restart when Kyle Larson had dominated the race. I think that was back in 2021. Yeah, I agree, Brian. Bowman's a top 5 machine here at Dover. Wait. Oh, Bowman minus 125 at McDowell, stage 1. How long is stage 1? Like 80 laps, 100 laps?
I leave some of those derivative markets to you. It was enough for us to get involved with a qualifying matchup for the first time, and that was a sweat unlike anything
it was.
To try and do that. But stage matchups, I defer to you guys as the experts. I'd rather trust a longer sample size in case something goes haywire, because I do think Bowman could race his way back through the field, and McDowell is going to do everything he can to race for stage points early.
Yeah, you're probably right. But I like Bowman today. If you said he was heavy on your card, I would agree. AJ Allmendinger, this is a good track for Dinger. Gosh, Colleague's been terrible this year. This is a good starting position for this team. I feel like that's got to lift their spirits a little bit. I don't know that the speed was in his race car over the long run. In fact, I think he fell off as much as anybody over the long run. But I do think that because of his history at this track, he could kind of get it around and maybe hang out top 15. Again, though, he's one of those guys where if he finds himself back in traffic or back with the squirrels, I think he gets his nuts busted and he finds himself a lap down. But you could say the same thing about Kyle Busch. I think if Kyle Busch finds himself back with the squirrels, he's going to get his nuts busted too. So, Dinger over Cindric. Ooh, yeah.
That's what I was going to say. I mean, I'm looking at the screen right now. I mean, Dinger is a slight dog against Cindric. You really want to make life miserable on a Sunday afternoon, that's the matchup you bet, because you're not going to see them on the scoring pylon. After halfway through stage 2. Those guys will be fighting at the back of the field, and maybe 20th is enough to get it done. But look, if you have an opportunity, we talk about it all the time. It doesn't matter necessarily what driver it is. Austin Cindric shouldn't be $1.40 over anybody unless it's a road course.
Yeah, I agree. Speaking of Austin Cindric, I mean, I expect him kind of straight to the back. This is kind of an ongoing thing with him. Multiple pit stops in practice, very spotty lap times. Usually spotty lap times to me say ill handling race car. Throw in 35 other cars racing around you and 23-second laps with 36 cars at a mile track. The last thing you want is an edgy race car. These cars are already on edge. And if you can't consistently run under 24 seconds without, for 3 or 4 laps without popping up to a 24-1 or even a 23-9, man, you're going to lose a lot of spots because no one's just going to give you, let you in. That's not the way it works here, especially when you're running in that top 10. Everyone's going to be fighting for every inch as hard as it is to pass. I think Cindric drops like a rock.
I mean, look, if NASCAR offered the same markets that we see in F1, first retirement, I mean, Austin Cindric would be towards the top of my list as a potential, 12-1, 15-1 shot, if that was the number they offered up. Because to your point, I just don't think this track suits his driving abilities. I wasn't blown away with anything I've seen from Cindric in the intermediate package so far this season. So, I don't think he's a guy that's going to factor into a whole lot of decision-making. At the same time, I'm not running to lay $1.40 with Michael McDowell against him either.
Yeah, I agree. I think just laying $1.40 today in general with what we know about, Ross just brought up a point. Is this seat getting a little warm for old Austin Cindric? I think it could be, but I think Penske
his dad wasn't who his dad was. He would be out of his seat already. Let's not sugarcoat.
Although to his defense, he was really good in the Xfinity series. Now, Penske, the 22 in the Xfinity series was definitely a stout race car. So, anyway, Josh Berry, kind of a strong run out of him. And he also ran well here last year, filling in. I think he was who was he filling in for? Was it
Chase Elliott?
Was it the 48 or was it the 9?
Either way, Bowman or Elliott, someone in the HMS camp.
Yeah, I think Josh Berry ran well, and he looked decent in practice and didn't have to pit, which to me again says stable race car. Berry was in the 48. Yeah, I thought he ran pretty well here. So. I like Berry. Gosh, do you trust him? He's made some massive mistakes, and I've laid a few prices with him in matchups, and I haven't been excited to see his late race mistakes where he ends up a lap down and then he during green flag stops or speed. So maybe the top 10. I do think, a top 10 price, maybe. What is he, 2.5 or 3 to 1 for that top 10 price? Because you're going to get paid. I do think that he's right around maybe that caliber of a race car, but we'll run through the top 10 kind of as we wrap things up, or who I think is going to be in the top 10. Any feel on Josh?
Your boy taking a little bit of money against everybody's amigo and Daniel Suarez. That price drifting out right now. A little bit surprised, honestly, though, when I look at some of the matchups, and I know we haven't gotten to the 23 of Bubba Wallace yet, that Josh Berry is actually a slight favorite there for just the point that you outlined there. I mean, Berry, from a racing capability standpoint, can get the most out of his machine, but do you trust him over the course of a full race, not to shoot himself in the foot? You look at the 2 races in the intermediate package this year for Berry, finished right outside the top 10 at Bristol, did a good job with his tire management there. And in Vegas was never really in the thick of things. I think it was right around an 18th to 20th place finish thereabouts. So again, a guy I can see making a slight case for as an underdog, maybe against Chase Briscoe, but it feels like a leap of faith. And if anything, I'd be trying to maybe make a case for Bubba Wallace against him, but no strong opinion there on Josh Berry. If you can find a long shot top 10 price, definitely a guy that could sneak in and crash the back half of the party there, but not a guy I'm on or against.
Yeah, I agree. That being said, I do still see some lines that haven't moved on that. Some of those screen matchups here. Hang on.
I'll let you do that because this is
very
always
small amount of.
Yeah, this is always great live content when people can watch you try and sit around on your phone and navigate through the screen to figure some of these things out. But as we know, for some of the folks that tune in, I mean, these matchups come up seemingly later and later. Forget the Xfinity and Truck Series; those pretty much have become afterthoughts. But when it comes to the Cup, getting these matchups up 2 hours before the race, you can understand why they take relatively low limits. All things being equal outside the desert.
Yeah. So let's go on to Joey Logano. Gosh, he didn't look terrible, but that's, imagine saying that about a 2-time champion. Well, he didn't look terrible. It's hard to put my finger on him. A lot of the times, if 13th is actually probably a decent starting spot for that team. When you look at relative to his teammate, I think he's significantly off, but he's also Joey Logano, had a ton of success just pretty much everywhere. He's also a guy that if he solidifies track position in any way, I think he'll be around all day, but I could see him, kind of dropping maybe to like 20th, or I could see him maybe hanging out top 10 all day. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't have the next gen finishes yet. Now, he did get caught in a wreck last year, so that one, of course, comes with an asterisk. He wasn't much better the year before, but to your point, his qualifying effort, much better now, the 3rd time there in the next gen car. I know last year we didn't have qualifying, so he started deep in the field and was just never able to get out of his own way. So I'd like to see a little bit more out of the 22, quite honestly. I just haven't seen a ton from him in general when we come to this intermediate package. I know he's taken a little bit of money against Tyler Reddick when we look at some of the matchups that are there. But look, I'm not willing to lay $1.60 with Kyle Busch against Joey Logano, but I'm not sure I want to tie up a whole lot of cash in Joey Logano, and it wouldn't shock me whatsoever if we were talking about him finishing outside the top 10. So
yeah, and with that being said, it's been hard to pass. So Logano's going to have to steal track position to beat Kyle Busch, or Kyle Busch is going to have to make a mistake if you're going to back that side. Because I could just see kind of Kyle saying, hey, damage control right now on this 8 team. If we can just get a decent finish, maybe give them a little bit of confidence heading into these next few tracks where I think Kyle could be competitive. So I think that he's not going to be I don't think Kyle's going to wreck out or like he has in the past, but if he can just kind of get a good finish, I think that would give them a lot of momentum heading into a place like Kansas and then off to Darlington as well, where they've been really strong. So we're going to skip Daniel Hemrick. Congratulations on that qualifying. I don't anticipate you hanging around very long. I think your talent will run out at some point. It's just a matter of it in the first 50 laps, or are you going to wait till the last 50? Martin Truex Jr., kind of a shocking qualifying. I kind of thought he'd run or qualify a little bit better. Did not seem to show the same speed as some of these other Toyotas. I thought Tyler Reddick looked slightly better. I thought Denny Hamlin was significantly better. I do think he's going to race well, but I think he's a little too short from an outright perspective, and maybe a little too short in matchups, but also a guy I don't want to run to fade.
He had some interesting comments saying that it's been a little bit different at Dover for him in the next gen car, which is surprising because he's still run well here in the past. And I think Truex is the kind of guy that when you look at a Dover setup, if it's hot and slick, he's a guy that car is going to come to him over the course
Yeah.
of the long run. So, I mean, if you're looking to bet against Truex, do it with elite drivers. Maybe it's Denny Hamlin.
Yeah.
Maybe it's William Byron, if so inclined, but that would be the extent of it. I'm not running to bet against this guy. And if anything, as I look at the matchups right now that are available, he's intriguing to me as a plus 130 thereabouts underdog against Kyle Larson. And knowing that Truex is going to get the best out of his car. We saw his brother drive to victory lane for the second straight year in the Xfinity Series yesterday. So this isn't a track where I like to go against Martin Truex. He's a guy I either want to be on or I just kind of want to avoid. And if I'm not going to have any exposure to him in the outright market, hope to dodge late in the race.
Yeah, especially if you can glean nothing from practice. I think that, if you're going to base fading him off of yesterday, I don't think that's a smart idea. So again, nothing on or against Truex. Bubba's a guy, man, interesting. This is one of those in-between tracks for him. I saw Big Ross mention earlier, usually a lot of on throttle time is good for Bubba Wallace. It's when he has to feather that throttle, maintain a lot of corner speed. That's where he tends to struggle. Also, anytime you have to save tires, he's gotten better. I don't think he's elite yet. And at this track, the groove moves up. I don't know if that benefits Bubba. I think that he's kind of one of those guys that if you can plant that car right on the bottom, he'll be fast typically all day. He's gonna be hard to pass. I just don't see him making passes. I think that there's speed in the Toyotas, so he has that going for him, but I don't see him making a lot of passes. Maybe run around kind of this starting spot's probably where he finishes today, if I had to guess.
Yeah, I think, look, I mean, when you're talking about Bubba and this particular track, he can become his own worst enemy, and he's got to be disciplined. He's got to stay, in his lane, so to speak, and know what the machine underneath him is going to be able to give him. So I haven't seen enough from a track history standpoint that he's a guy that I feel comfortable betting on. And I think some of that speaks to why of all the drivers I look here on the screen this morning, hasn't seen any movement on or against, because he doesn't appear to be a driver that you can hang your hat on previous track history, but the upside and that potential is there. So the 23 for me, very much an afterthought in terms of my betting card.
Yeah, and if he somehow, let's say, I don't know how you really steal track position, whether you stay out long and a caution comes, but he's also a guy that if he's running fifth, I still think he's going to be hard to pass. Like I said, I don't think he's going to drive to the lead. I don't think he's going to drive into the top 10, but there's so many guys we've seen just kind of inherit this track position, and he's a guy that he could hang out. I think he's got plenty of talent, and there's clearly enough speed. Ricky Stenhouse, good qualifying for him, probably his best track.
Ricky on concrete, baby. It's the theory that doesn't always hold fruit, but we continue to bank on it nonetheless.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's all you can say. If someone says that they want to bet on Ricky because his history here, I would say, okay. If there's someone that says that 47's been trash all year, I'd bet against him. I'd say, okay, fair enough. Either way, don't lay a price. You definitely want to make sure that you're minimizing the kind of juice you're going to pay. Chris Buescher, man, decent in practice. I think he was planning on being better. He does like this track, and if you like it, like a track, I think it lends itself to running particularly better. Man, I kind of shocked that he didn't look better. But I still think he races well. He is a guy
that's been RFK in general, though. I mean, when have we come away from practice or qualifying going, hey, look, Chris Buescher and Brad Kay look like they have the car to beat. They start deep in the field. They work their way up. They pick off a car or two. And suddenly by stage 3, we're going, look, are we shocked that the 17 or the 6 have a chance for yet another top 10 finish?
I agree. Brad liked his car. Yeah, Brad, I think, came out and just lied to people. When Brad said,
one or two adjustments, we're going to try and put it on the poll, Worms, or one or two adjustments.
He said this such and such a Ford is really fast. And I went, compared to what? Compared to Harrison Burton? Yeah, it's fast. But the other thing too is I do think he'll race better, right? but to say it was fast, I mean, he just basically lied. He said, fans, you guys are idiots. And I'm going to tell you my car is fast. Now, it might race well, but his car is not fast.
I mean, his car wasn't fast at Texas either, and the dude came out of there with a second place finish.
Yeah, that was kind of a good finish for him.
I'll tell you one thing, by the way. If there is courting at any point during this race and tire management becomes a concern, Brad would be the first guy that I'd want to add at a long shot price to my live betting
100%. Card. Yeah, you're taking the 3 guys that finished well at Bristol, and that's, Hamlin, Truex, Brad. I don't think that anyone, if we start to see that issue, I do think, Big Ross, I think that they all, Brad's been a soundbite. Did you hear him say, what did he say? Something about Eric Jones's car? Like, seeing Corey Heim drive Eric Jones's car is a lot like watching your buddy sleep with your wife. I'd imagine it's like, oh wow, Brad, that went dark fast. But hey, it's a great soundbite. Ty Gibbs, I kind of expected him to qualify better. That just goes to show you how tough this monster mile is. We've seen him qualify well. He's run well in that intermediate package. He was good. He wasn't great. Is he a guy that can drive up through the field? We haven't seen that out of him. We've seen him qualify in the top, 7 or so and mingle in the top 5 and just kind of be there all day. We just haven't seen him pass a ton of cars. And I think you're going to have to pass a lot of cars if you're going to start 19th. I think you're going to have to get up there and make passes. I think as nervous as these crew chiefs are going to be about tires, I think everyone's pitting and taking 4. I don't see 2 as an option. Maybe if there's been like a 15 or 20 lap run, but I don't know. It depends on how these tires look after the first run. So if anything, I'm reaching to fade Ty. I just think he's a little overvalued at this point as a whole, especially for how he qualified and how he looked in practice.
Look, Ty Gibbs, we've talked about being one of the more overvalued commodities right now in NASCAR. Not because the talent isn't there, but every week, it doesn't matter what the track type is. It seems like guys are running to try and bet him. And it was a joke that we had before the season started. If he didn't win a race early on, there was going to be no value betting him on a week in, week out basis. It almost reminds me of your beloved favorite Swede golfer and Ludwig Aubert, whose prices continue to get shorter, but he hasn't won yet. And by the time he does win, it's going to be price prohibitive. So, you look at Ty, did show a little bit more long run speed, and I think he could be there in that regard. There is one matchup that intrigues me as a potential Ty Gibbs fade. I'm not sure I want to talk about it right now, but we can get to it later on in the show, and I can send you a text with that particular BI number.
I already know what it is, and I almost played it already. But we'll avoid that at this point because I do see prices moving quite quickly now. As we talk about them. So we'll just kind of table that one for now. Let's see. Carson Hocevar. The guy's fast. Do you trust him? I don't know. No. I don't know. I think that's all we.
That's your boy. You guys and your love for Portage, Michigan. I can't stand in the way of this brewing bromance in one capacity.
I don't know. You can't touch Carson at this point. If anything, you take him flyer top 10 or something. But you're not backing him in matchups. I think he's still learning. He's still young. Yeah, he's fast when he's running good. But when it doesn't matter because you make a mistake, it's tough to back. Kyle Larson. Well, certainly still priced like we don't even need to race. Not quite sure what Kyle Larson can do to float. Like, what else do you need to do? Look,
I think this is it. I think this is the world we live in now where Kyle Larson, regardless of how he looks in practice, he could start dead last in the field and he may go from a 4-1 pre-week guy to 5.5 or 6-1 on any track where he has showed some level of competency or dominance in the past. But he's not, again, another driver that's not afraid to get himself into a little bit of trouble. That doesn't always appear to avoid the incidents.
Yeah. I don't know. Listen, there's a lot of people out here that could just take him across the board. And if there's a driver, if you just look at this field, you look at practice, there's maybe 2 guys that this guy's going to dominate a race. This guy's going to dominate the race. He's going to run away with it. There's 2 guys. It's Denny Hamlin and Kyle Larson. I don't care how they looked in practice. Just to dominate a race, there's only 2 guys that can do it. Kyle Larson's on that short list, in my opinion. If we just stick with another driver that we anticipated to be really good, is Ross Chastain. Although Trackhouse did not look as good as they have in the past. No. But Chastain's never a guy that after practice you go, oh, I think he's going to be the car to beat. It just doesn't happen. That's just not the way that they operate. They tend to run a few laps in pit. But he did not jump off the board in practice as a guy that, was just going to drive through the field. So it'll be interesting to see how he runs. It'll be interesting to see how that 5 and the 1 kind of start the race. Like, who is able to work their way through traffic? If you see one of those 2 guys, pick up 4 or 5 spots early in a run, they might be, maybe look to them for a live betting. But I imagine that they're both going to kind of march to the field. Hopefully Chastain doesn't do anything stupid to ruin either of their days like we've seen in the past. But gosh, I expect him to run better than he looks, but he's kind of priced like he's going to run well. So I kind of anticipate that as well.
Yeah, that's the hardest part. When you look for Chastain, hoping that he was undervalued. He's matched up, given his pre-week price, against the elite drivers in the sport. So while normally you'd say, hey, look, maybe there's a little bit of upside if you take him as an underdog in some of these matchups, knowing that we don't know exactly what some of the big boys are going to bring. I'm not running the back Chastain, even as a dog against Hamlin. I don't necessarily want to do it against William Byron, Truex. I mean, I just don't think there are ways to really attack. If anything, if I'm betting Ross Chastain in a matchup because you think he's going to get more out of his car, I know it's going to kill you, Worm, and you would never do it. But the guy that I would look to bet him against would be Kyle Larson. I'd be willing to take that plus 155 price or thereabouts against Larson more so than some of the other drivers.
And just banking on Larson's inability to finish a race,
Well, I mean, which has been very real.
Yeah.
I mean, Larson has 4 top 10s so far this season. A 40% clip doesn't tell me you're an elite driver compared to your teammate in William Byron, who's finished top 10 in 70% of the races with a 7 out of 10 thing. So Larson, again, another guy could win the race or he could finish 15.
Yeah. Or, well, I don't even know that 15th is an option. It's like
20th?
It's either
maybe he wants to get to Indy. Maybe he wants to wreck and get right back to Indy. I mean, Kurt Busch told us the month of May could be a problem for the 5, not because of his talent, but you're not able to put nearly as much time in the sims. There's a lot of distractions and other responsibilities. So I think it's a storyline worth watching with Kyle Larson if odds makers are going to continue to pay him this much respect.
Yeah, I agree. Everyone kind of on the same page there with kind of understanding Larson kind of checkers.
Cocktail too.
Oh, you look at you. Let's see. Chastain minus 155 over Bowman. I actually like Bowman on that side more than I like Chastain. Again, I don't like laying a price with what we know in practice yesterday. It's going to be really hard for me to lay a price. I'm not laying 55. Yeah, I agree with Big Ross. Yeah, yes, no prices would be amazing, Connor, but let's walk before we can crawl, or let's crawl before we can walk.
We're not there yet, Connor. Trust me, we're politicking and banging the drum for yes, no's on top 10s. We'd be betting against Larson and Hamlin every week.
Yeah, while taking them to win the race. Austin Dillon, you have to think that RCR has to feel good about just the way things have gone with Kyle Busch, but the only thing worse than Kyle Busch this year has been Austin Dillon. And, if this track widens out, maybe he did run a lot of laps in practice, which actually has me, he ran as many as I think he ran the most laps in practice. It shows a little bit of confidence. Still, I think to make the assumption that because his teammate looked good, you can count on RCR just being fast in general. I would listen. I'd be shocked if Kyle fell out of the top 10, but I'm not going to be. I'm not backing Austin Dillon today. I'll just be. I don't know. I'm opinionless on Austin Dillon. If anything, you fade him. You
can bet your boy in the 10 car is a slight underdog against the 3, so there may be a little bit of opportunity a little bit further down the board. Yeah.
Brad Keselowski, like I said, not fast in practice, but seemed confident in his car. And an experienced driver like Keselowski, I'm not going to say, well, you're not going to run well because you said that your car was fast, and I disagree. Brad's one of those guys that if he's like, hey, no, my car is actually fine, perfect. It might not look good on the stopwatch, but I think that the stopwatch might be a little overrated based on what we saw from the way the track was yesterday versus how it's going to be today. So I do like the potential upside with Brad Keselowski. Do I think he can drive up to the lead? No. He's probably going to need some well-timed cautions, but if he can pick off, 6, 7, 8 cars in the first run, get a caution, keep his track position, maybe pick off a few more, he could find himself, running 5th, 6th, 7th with the second half of the race.
10 straight races here. He's picked up stage points, at least in one capacity or another, and he hasn't had great cars. I mean, you look at some of his next-gen results. Finished 8th last year after starting 4th. Again, with no qualifying there. Started 20th the year before, finished 20th, and then finished 16th in his final run with Team Penske in May of 2021 after starting 15th. So starting position has kind of been indicative of where Brad ends up finishing the race, being priced like he's going to be a back marker on the lead lap. So again, not a guy that I think you want to try and run to fade at some of these prices, but at the same time, not one that you're going to overexpose yourself. Has taken a little bit of money in his head-to-head against his former teammate, Joey Logano. But other than that, haven't seen a whole heck of a lot in terms of how Brad is being priced. But it is interesting, the respect that odds makers are paying him. I mean, Brad and Kyle Busch listed as a pick'em right now. And you look at Kyle Busch priced at $1.60 favorite over Joey Logano. So a little bit of food for thought there.
Yeah. Okay. Keep moving with Corey LaJoy. Okay, we can just keep moving on.
Yeah. I know
Harrison
you like
Burton,
to touch
same
on
thing.
everybody because equal opportunity. I think we keep moving on a lot of these guys.
Yeah, I would say Harrison Burton. He probably looked as bad as anybody in practice. Maybe Daniel Suarez looked worse. Jimmy Johnson actually looked decent. If seven-time here, if there's a place where he's going to have success, I've been shocked at the tracks he's running and running a place like Texas. Yeah, he was good there, but at the old configuration.
Right.
This is a place where he has to feel at home. And if we do get some off throttle time, in the track widens out and you actually have to pick someone that has obviously the most success here, it's Jimmy Johnson. Does that team have the speed under the hood? Probably not, but it'd be fun to watch him pick up spots. If he's up like 8 spots in the first run, this could get really exciting, but I'm not going to hang my hat on that. I don't know.
If I'd have told you 5 to 7 years ago, Jimmy Johnson would be a sizable underdog to Ryan Preece in a head-to-head matchup in the Cup Series, I'm not sure what you'd have done, but that matchup opened as a pick-em. We're seeing Preece out to $1.50. I think the one thing that can help the 84 this week, Jimmy Johnson, is that he's back in the Cup car for the second time in 3 weeks. I can't imagine what it's like for these guys that are creatures of habit when you're running one race at the super speedway. You don't run again for another 12 weeks. So maybe being back in the race for the second time in 3 weeks gives him a little bit of comfort. He did show some speed at certain points, but he also got loose and the rear end almost snapped on him. So again, I thought he was going to be a guy that you could look to bet against, but that number continues to drift. I'd probably be more inclined to bet Jimmy in the head-to-head against Ryan Preece than bet against him.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we can kind of jump into Ryan Preece. This isn't his cup of tea, this particular track, in my opinion. He's a little bit better when it comes to super short tracks. Do you trust Ryan Preece? I mean, starting 28.
Laying a price? Absolutely not. It's a bet against Jimmy Johnson more so than it's a bet on Ryan Preece. If you're getting involved in any of those matchups.
He fell off a lot. He didn't really pit. It wasn't like Ryan Preece had short or long run here. I think, maybe the people that got that pick 'em price on him. All right. Yeah. You beat the market a little bit, but I think now the value's on that 84 side of that matchup. Seeing up to plus 122. It looks like at Jazz. So Chase Elliott, well, I think if he qualifies a little better, you're comfortable saying that this guy potentially has a chance at winning the race. I think that he didn't look as good. I thought that two guys looked better, clearly better, when that was Ryan Blaney and Denny Hamlin. I think that something happened at Texas, gives this team a little bit of momentum. And he didn't look bad, but man, that was a terrible qualifying. I like Chase today. I don't know how you build him into your card. I still think you're starting that deep. You're going to need a little bit of luck. You're not, I don't see him just picking up 8 spots a run and just finds himself sitting, P6 starting the final stage. I just don't see that happening.
When you look at tracks, I mean, this has typically been Chase Elliott. You can make the case that it's arguably his best track.
Yeah.
From a consistent finish standpoint and where he's been. I mean, driver ratings well north of 115 in 2 out of the last 3 trips. Last year started 10th, finished 11th. But I mean, look, last year felt like a lost season and he still ran real well here. I was hoping, quite honestly, that the outright price drifted a little bit further, given what we saw in one driver that I know we're going to get to before we wrap this up. And at 20 to 1 or better, I'd have had no problem making a small case for Chase Elliott, thinking that, hey, he catches a little bit of luck. He can work his way through the field. I liked him early in the week.
Too short.
Yeah, the outright price is too short. I liked him early in the week against Ryan Blaney. Had hoped that number had opened a little bit longer. Would have been mildly intrigued to take plus 120 in the head-to-head there with him, but I'm not willing to lay $180 against Christopher Bell or some of the other spots that are there.
No.
And I think the most interesting one is against his teammate, but Bowman's taken some money. And again, to your point, I'm not sure you're running to the window to try and lay $130 on Chase Elliott right now. So kind of a guy that I think will be in the mix or can be in the mix if things break the right way for him.
They have
to your point, difficult to try and race through the field here.
Yeah, and you're gonna that 29th selection pit stall. I haven't seen where he's going to be pitting, but it's just Big Ross said no value on Chase. He's just priced like he's going to be really good, and I don't think he looked good enough in practice, and I don't think it's easy enough. It's so easy to pass where you can just automatically dump this guy in the top 10 and say, yeah, that's where he's going to finish, and he's priced like that. So I think that there's just too much variance that could happen. I don't think he controls his own destiny. And whenever that's the case, it's really tough to take that 12-1 price. I was shocked when he opened there. I think I was kind of shocked at all the openers. Couldn't believe Kyle on the poll. That's just Kyle at Dover. That might be more shocking than seeing Johnson as a dog to Ryan Preece. Kyle Busch pulls it at Dover and opens at 25-1.
I just wonder, I mean, God, that's going to be interesting to watch. I mean, and we're going to get a real good litmus test for clean air versus RCR potential adjustments or long run speed that's there for Kyle. Because to your point, it wouldn't surprise me at all if he wins the first stage, or if Kyle Busch is like a Joey Logano light and just drops like a brick, that by the time that we're getting to the end of the first stage, he's not even in the top 10. And we know the day could go from bad to worse pretty quickly for the 8 car, as much as anybody on the grid. Todd
Gillen, we're going to skip. I don't even know that there's much you can do with Gillen this week. Daniel Suarez.
Ooh, good track for him. Didn't look good though in limited practice.
Look good. Didn't look comfortable. Outside of not being comfortable, was slow. So
dangerous combination.
Race car, couple that with some slow lap times. I don't think it looks good for him. He'll be tough to pass. He'll be tough to put a lap down. But top 10 in 5 of 9 Dover races and good equipment, which is, I agree. Let's see. We'll get to that question here in a second, Ross. I just want to get through. Corey Heim actually looked decent in practice, but, can you trust him? I think he's just trying to run all the laps. The only other guy I want to talk about is Chris Bell. Not his best track, but we've also seen him excel at places where he hasn't had a ton of success before. We saw him kind of go and dominate in Phoenix. I know that was a different package, but you'd think that if you have to search for a line and this track widens out, that Chris Bell is a guy that could work his way up through the field. Again, he's going to have to take some risks, and that could be feast or famine. But I don't know. I don't know how I feel about Chris Bell. I think he's hard enough to back when he qualifies top 5, let alone, doesn't even.
Well, he's hard enough to back when he qualifies top 5 because you have to lay prices. Right now, he's being priced like a back marker guy, and we're seeing him take money against. I mean, I know last year he started up front, finished 6th. 2 years ago, started 17th, finished 4th. I mean, Chris Bell on concrete hasn't exactly been the worst recipe for success. If it gets to be hot and slick, we see the track widen out. He's one of those guys that I'd be interested in because if he starts to show speed, he could be very much in the thick of things. But again, to your point, this was a price open 25-1, immediately got bet down to 20, and at 20-1, I can't sit here in good faith and make a case for Christopher Bell in the outright market.
Yeah, I think that Troy brought up a good point. Custer was not good in practice, and he was the best car yesterday. I 100% agree with that. I think that Allgaier, when you look at practice for the Xfinity race, for those of you that were paying attention, the best cars, obviously Ryan Truex was one of the best cars. I thought AJ Allmendinger was good in practice, and Justin Allgaier was good in practice. Cole Custer was not on my radar at all, and he made up spots early and often, and he was kind of racing in the top 3, I think 40 or 50 laps into that race. And it was running a much different line than we saw in practice. And if that's the case, we could see something there, Bell over Gibbs plus 115. Oh, gosh,
it's continuing to drift. And when we look at Bell, look, I know you're higher on Blaney, I think, this week than I am, although we have a little bit of outright exposure. So hopefully it's good to the upside. Even at plus 140, you just got to make up so much ground. You look at the numbers here against Alex Bowman. I don't think that offers much, but trust me, I've tried to find a way to back Christopher Bell. Haven't gotten there yet, but Ty Gibbs probably the closest for me.
Yeah. Let's see. Practice in Xfinity correlates less than Cup. The only thing I would say to that is
conditions this week.
Practice conditions a little similar than Cup. So Cup is going to be, I think Cup's going to be very different. Dump one in the outright market. Larson 5-1, Hamlin 7, Truex 850. I think Hamlin 7-1 is the best price there. I don't even think it's close, especially if you have a chance to grab something in the live markets. I think not that I know we'll see Larson 5-1, but you're not going to hurt yourself. He's not going to all of a sudden go to 3-1, 10 laps into the race, even if he's picked up 2 or 3 spots. So Bell come into play as a long shot for a stage winner. Man, that would be not possible in my opinion. maybe stage 2, but we're
I
going
was
to
going
have
to
to know.
say stage 2 would be the one that I'd be much more intrigued by than stage 1. I don't think he's going to be able to race his way through the field that quickly and stay out and not take tires or anything ridiculous like that.
If you think that, though, that he's going to 20-1 stage 2, why not take him to win the race? It buys him more laps.
Fair.
And if he races all the way up to win stage 2, he's got to be the heavy favorite to win the damn race. So I think if the payouts are the same at that 20-1 stage 2 price, I like him more to win than I do stage 2, just because if he gets there in stage 2, he's going to be a player to win the race. Stage 1 would be, I don't know a scenario where he can get up there in time. Even if he stays out, I think tires matter too much here to where even if he takes 2 tires and he finds himself running 10th, gosh, he's going to have 4 tires behind him, and I don't know if he's going to be able to hold them off. So I think stage 1 is kind of a sucker bet. I don't think he can get there. And if you like that stage 2 20-1 price, I would say you have to take him to win if you're going to get that same payout, because it's going to buy him 160 more laps to get there, or whatever it is, to kind of get that race done. And that's going to be a fast race car. He's not going to do that without having a lot of speed. You're not just going to be able to take a chance and get there. So I guess my top 10, I'm going to put Kyle Busch in there. I'm going to put Ryan Blaney.
Are you going to pick 18 drivers like you do every week on this?
No, I'm just going to do 10.
Okay.
Kyle Busch, Ryan Blaney, William Byron, Tyler Reddick, Denny Hamlin, Alex Bowman, Martin Truex Jr., Kyle Larson, Ross Chastain. Oh gosh. Chase Elliott?
Okay, so we should be betting Chase Elliott against Ryan Blaney because you didn't pick Ryan Blaney to be in the top 10?
I said Blaney. I said Kyle Busch, Ryan Blaney.
I'm going to need a pen for this. This is a lot. Can you give them to me again to make sure you don't name the same drivers?
Ryan Blaney.
Hold on. 8, 12, okay.
24.
24.
45.
What'd you say? 45?
Yep.
Tyler Reddick.
Denny Hamlin.
That would be the 11. So we got 5.
Alex Bowman.
Okay, the 48, 6.
Martin Truex Jr.
Okay, 19 makes 7.
Kyle Larson.
Okay, 5 makes 8.
Ross Chastain.
Okay, the 1 makes 9.
And Chase Elliott.
Okay. 9 makes 10.
Yeah, when I did this earlier with Derek, I always go through my top 10. I had like 14 cars. He's like, well, you already have 4 losing bets. Yeah, that's what I think. I do think Chase has a good enough car. I do think Kyle Busch, like if there was someone you could throw out of that top 10, if something happens to anybody but Larson and Hamlin, I don't think anyone's going to be fast enough to get back up there. And those guys have to do that early in the run. So that's kind of where I'm at.
I may have to add to our stay green best bet right now. I can grab plus 125 on Tyler Reddick head to head against Kyle Busch. I think I got to take my shot there.
That's your shot?
No, I mean, that's not saying I'm going to add a second.
It's plus 125 now?
Yeah, I can get him plus 125 at Circus. So I'm going to pick that number off now and add to what I had earlier. You can continue talking, though. I'm just a guest on this program. I'm not the host.
Yeah. Well, any other questions? Who were the 4 extras? I don't know. I probably threw, I don't know. I can't remember.
You're just rattling off a top 10 market like they're priced by odds makers. So we'll figure out which guys are minus $6, etc.
Big Ross brought up a decent one here. He's got 45 over 6, 8, and 17 plus 220. Yeah, you're probably on the good side of that. But at that price, you could just take him. Well, like Todd said, you could take him plus 125 over Kyle. The only one you really have to worry about, I don't think you have to worry about Brad today, although I could be wrong. But here's the thing: at 45, if he's that good, I do think that maybe a win price on the guy. I don't know. I don't think that. I don't want to get too far. I don't think it's a bad number there. That plus 220.
I haven't won a group bet ever in NASCAR, so I'm the worst one to ask. I think of any market in any sport, I have the worst win probability in NASCAR group bets. For whatever reason, I have a better track record of picking outrights than I do winning a group bet. Yeah,
so Hamlin plus 107 or Larson. I wouldn't fade Larson. So here's my winner. I'm gonna pick Ryan Blaney to win. That's my pick. I was kind of shocked at the openers when he opened at 14-1. Kind of couldn't believe that. Gosh, he looked good. Now, I don't think he can dominate the race. I think if anyone's going to dominate the race, it's going to be the 11 or the 5. So, who you like? Who's your pick to win?
Are we picking just to win, or are we picking based off of where I would actually bet given some
No,
of
I
the
think
current
just
numbers?
pick to win.
I want to make sure that I'm doing this correctly and I'm not ruining the integrity of your fine program here.
Wow. Well, here
I'll
I
take
can always to add credibility for this. We can do that. Like,
yeah, there
so
we go. I mean, that's
okay.
probably the way it should be set up. I'll make a case for the 11. I'll take Denny Hamlin.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, in my headline for today. So tomorrow, everyone's going to be talking about this. Dover was the best race we've seen outside of Atlanta. It had multiple grooves, tons of passing, and it deserves 2 races in the future. That's my prediction for tomorrow.
You really think? I don't think there's any chance we're coming back to Dover. I don't think any track right now in the current construct is getting a race added back. I think we're at the point now where the Cup schedule will take races off the schedule to try and go to more venues. I would be stunned if we start to go back to any of these spots.
I never said it would happen. I said that's what everyone's going to be talking about is who steals track position today. Well, if I had to gamble, not much of a gambler myself, but I would say Chris Bell and Chase Elliott better be doing everything they can to steal some track position. I do think that the 1 and the 5 can kind of methodically work their way up there. They're going to make quick work at Carson Hocevar, Ty Gibbs, Ricky Stenhouse, Bubba Wallace, Daniel Hemrick. Those guys are going to be fading back. I think you'll see them kind of just outside the top 10 as we end stage 1. I don't know how Chase Elliott gets to the front without stealing track position. Under 15.5 lead lap finishers, 9 of last 10. Yeah, but those have been long green flag runs. I guess you have to have that. We did see it towards the end last year. I don't know. The 15.5 lead lap finishers, I don't know.
Holy hell.
I got no feel there.
Kyle Busch outright at some spots is down to 8-1. I mean, are we going turn back the clock, or are we putting that much emphasis on clean air today? Christ.
I mean, well, how do you not? When has someone had?
I guess you have to put some on it, but I mean, I just don't know if anything. I mean, basically, we're saying he's going to go out there and dominate the race from start to finish.
Well, here's what I would say.
I didn't know his number had gotten that short, honestly.
These cars are all the same, right? In theory. Kyle Busch was, let's see, what did he win the pole by? I mean, 3 1,000ths. So
it's 1 damn lap, 2 laps.
Yeah, I know. But here's the thing. It has to be, if we're going to say that the 8 hasn't been that fast, that means Kyle Busch ran a hell of a lap. And I understand that, but everyone was fast. A lot of guys were faster than him in practice. If Kyle just has that clean air, and maybe, and Kyle struggled, by the way, in the 18 when we were in this car as well. So, or he was never in the 18, was he? He was never in the 18 in this car.
No, yeah, 1 season, first year.
1 season. Year.
Yeah,
he struggled in this car anyway. I think that we see him out front. He won from the pole last year. This is the one thing where I think, Busch wins or crashes. I do think, I think that, but there's also a part of me that thinks that they want to just get a top 5 finish. So I think that if you got that 25-1 number, I think you got to be pretty happy. Even 18 was out there for a while. I don't like him at 8-1. I think that if he was priced in the matchup market like he was 8-1, I think you'd probably see some resistance there with fading him. So, or in fading him, not.
Yeah, we have a driver that's listed at 8-1 as the outright market, laying a $1.25 consensus across the board against Tyler Reddick. So one of those things is not like the other in terms of the way the market is kind of assessing the 8's overall profile today. But I mean, should be interesting. I mean, look, these are the kind of storylines we like to follow. So the 8 being up front and the 8 being good again, I think is great for the sport if he can start to pick things up, because he goes to a couple of tracks coming up where it suits his skill set, and we'll get an intermediate track. We go to Kansas or Darlington next week? I never remember.
Kansas.
So we go to Kansas.
Cinco de Huermo.
Yes, Cinco de Huermo. What day is Cinco de Huermo? Everywhere.
May 5th. That's it'll be 39 Cinco de Huermo. So I will have my sombrero. I'll have a margarita, and we'll probably see, I don't know, probably Daniel Suarez in Victory Lane next week. So there's my pick next week for Kansas. It's Daniel Suarez. All right, let's get out of here. Cheers, Todd. Thanks for coming on.
Cheers.
Appreciate it.
Hey, by the way, for everybody tuning in, we'll put up our best bet head-to-head matchup on the Bet the Board podcast website. Should be up in the next, what do you think, next 10, 15 minutes when we put our heads
we'll
together?
Get it out. I got to go take a leak, and then we'll be good to go.
Great. More information than anybody needed.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for letting me jump in and crash the party, Wormser.
Yep. Cheers.
Everybody.